What I Read in March book video. I've sort of settled off on the individual book reviews, and I thought for this month I would just do a sort of quick roundup. There is quite a variety of books here, so hopefully something takes your fancy. I have discovered a great Facebook group lately that is local to me, and basically people just put free things on there, and I've managed to get a couple of books off there, one of them which I'm about to show you, and then wait for it, I got this set of Twilight books. Yes, I have read Twilight, and I actually got rid of all my Twilight books. I've only got the newest one that she's brought out, but I managed to get the set of 3 still in all its plastic and her other novella, so I just need to acquire the 4th one and I will have my Twilight books back again. But yes, so one of these books that I'm about to show you that I've read this month, I got off that page, so it's been really great to be able to get some, you know, free books. So the first book I read was Last Stop in Auschwitz. This is by Eddie DeWind, and it is obviously a book written by Eddie, who is a survivor of the Holocaust, and he was in various camps within Auschwitz. He actually met his wife Frida in there, and it goes through pretty much just mainly his time in the camp. You know, like many people's stories, it is his story of survival and what he had to do on a daily basis just to get through. It talks about him, you know, trying to see his wife on a regular basis. He is a Dutch doctor, so that sort of came into good play for him, really. And he's a psychiatrist, so he was able to, you know, work in the medical wing. And his wife Frida, she was, I think she was like a nurse, but she ended up being one of the women that got tested on by Joseph Mengele, and so it talks a little bit about her experience, not too much, and I think a book from that side of things would be really extraordinary. I know there's a book about twins, The Twins of Auschwitz by Eva Moses Kaur. She was a twin, and it talks a little bit about her time, you know, being treated on by Joseph Mengele. So it talks a little bit like that, and it also again talks about he was there right up to really the end when the Nazis fled and when the Russians were coming in, so it talks pretty much through his journey and them being liberated at the camp. I gave this book 3 stars. It's really hard to rate books that are, you know, true life stories, especially when they are so harrowing. It sort of seems wrong to give it any less than 5 stars because, you know, every person's story is unique and every person's story is important to, you know, carrying on awareness of the Holocaust and not only anti-Semitism but other you know, racism against other groups of people. I did give it 3 out of 5 stars. Just I compare it to other testimonies that I've read, and whether it's hard to say enjoyed when it's such a heavy topic, but whether I sort of connected to the person as much, and sometimes it can be just down to writing style. So yeah, for me, I wouldn't say it's a bad book, and like I said, it's just really hard to put a rating on any, you know, true account from someone who was a survivor. So that's the first book. The next book I read was this. This is The Cousins. This is by Karen M. McManus. This, I believe, is probably classed as middle-aged, young adult, and it's about 3 cousins that their grandma writes to them one summer and invites them to come to this island. I believe it's probably off the coast of like America, New York, that sort of area, I guess. She's writing to her grandchildren asking them to come to her island. She's like a very wealthy woman, and to come and work on the island and like sort of get to know them. The story is that the cousins, their parents, so this grandmother's children, never have contact with her. They've ended it very much on bad terms, and there was this letter, and the grandmother said, like, you know what you did to her children, and it sort of goes on from there, and whether these three cousins have really been invited by their grandmother, was someone else writing to them. They sort of want to find out what this feud was between their parents and grandparents, and yeah, I quite enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It is multi-perspective, so you do hear from the 3 different cousins and sort of their relationship with their parents, and yeah, I enjoyed it. If you want sort of a young adult mystery, sometimes I like to read like middle grade young adult just so I have something quick to read, and I know it's not going to be like too dark. Yeah, so I enjoyed reading this. It wasn't one, like, I did shy away from YA for a while because I couldn't really connect to the characters, but I feel something like this, you don't really need to be able to like be the same age as them. I read that, and this is like sprayed black edges, which is cool. So the next book is one that I got free, and this is Happy Mum, Happy Baby by Giovanna Fletcher. It's in like fairly good condition, like, you know, it's been read, the spine's a little bit you know, bent, and the pages aren't like pristine white, but I just like, whenever I get books from other people, regardless who they are, I just put a little wet wipe over it, make sure it's all like sanitized, and then I'm happy to read it. Also, I feel when you get books secondhand, you're not as worried about keeping them in pristine condition. Like, if they get a little bit wet in the bath, it's not the end of the world, that sort of thing. But yes, this is by Giovanna Fletcher. If you don't know who she is wife to Tom Fletcher, who is in McFly. But she's pretty much made a name for herself now. She was on I'm a Celebrity. She has the Happy Mum, Happy Baby podcast. She has written numerous fiction, like romancy-esque type chick flick books, which I've not actually read any of those. But she wrote this not long after having her first 2 children. And it's basically talking all about motherhood, pregnancy, basically is what it says, my adventures in motherhood. I thought that she came across really like humble and down to earth in this book. She talks a lot about things that, you know, tend not to be spoken about around pregnancy and postpartum. Like, she gets into the nitty-gritty of things, and it just probably makes anyone going through motherhood and pregnancy have someone really relatable, because we can all have stories, you know, that from like family members, but sometimes it takes talking and like listening to other people's experiences where you can like actually relate to someone, if you don't know someone like firsthand that's gone through with something like that. So yes, I really enjoyed it, even though I'm not, you know, I'm not pregnant at the moment. Don't have any children, but I think this is a book that I would probably reread closer to actually having children, maybe during pregnancy, to be able to, you know, have someone to relate to. So I did give that 5 stars, and then I didn't read this one next, but I will talk about it. Darren bought me this not long after. This is Giovanna's book called Letters on Motherhood, and, you know, obviously since then she's had her 3rd child, so she is a mum of 3 young boys. And this is basically a really quick read. It is letters she has written primarily to her children, some to her husband, a couple to her parents, some just to like random people she's come across when, you know, in early stages of motherhood. And again, these two sort of go hand in hand, really. It is, you know, very down to earth, talking about experience she's gone through with her children, and, you know, navigating being not only a first-time mum but having, you know, 3 kids in the end. Again, a book that I probably would reread closer to having kids. Like I said, it was a really quick read, and it made me actually want to, you know, write very similar letters to my own child one day, because I think these are beautiful letters that her children can look back on and really you know what their mother was feeling at the time, and, you know, maybe able to relate to one day when they have kids. So again, I enjoyed this book as well and gave it 5 stars. The next book I read is very different to all the rest. This is Found by Erin Kinsley. This is a mystery, a thriller. I love mystery thriller books, but this is set in England, and it's about a boy, an 11-year-old boy called Evan, who one day goes missing. You know, you start reading and he's walking home to the bus stop with his friend, and then he never gets on the bus and gets home. We don't know what's happened to him. We just know that he didn't come home that day. And so it leads on from there. The parents obviously going through having a missing child. You also get the perspective from the detectives in the police who are trying to look for him. And so that's where it primarily flips between his parents and DI, Detective Inspector Naylor, and them trying to, you know, find him, break the case. I found it really interesting. It does say straight off the back, months later, Evan is unexpectedly found, so that's not like something I'm going to spoil to you. You sort of forget that when you read. You sort of, for me, you get so invested in the story that I sort of forgot that I knew he was going to come back at some point. And then obviously when he does come back, it is, you see how much it's affected him and his parents dealing with, you know, what is essentially a broken child. He's very much recessed in himself, and he doesn't really show his age. He's definitely withdrawn. He goes and stays with his grandparents, who live sort of more in the countryside on a farm, and he sort of flourishes more with them. I really enjoyed this book. It was something very different, and I felt like really invested in the story and the characters, and it was really interesting as well to see how it would affect a child. I mean, he's slightly older than a child, like early teenage years. But yes, how I did give this 5 stars. So if you're looking for that sort of thriller, that was really interesting. And then the final book I read was the one that I've recently finished. This is Grownups by Marian Keyes. This is a book that I've seen time and time again. You know, whenever you're going through the supermarkets, online, you see it all. It's someone I've heard of a lot, Marian Keyes. Darren actually bought me this book, and I'm so glad he did, because I thoroughly enjoyed this book. And I would be interested now in looking at some of her other copies. This is a special Asda edition, I believe, which is really cool. It's got the pink sprayed edges. But basically it's centered around one blended family. On the back it sort of focuses more on the 3 women of the family. So there are 3 women married to 3 brothers. So you've got Jessie, who is married to Johnny. You have Cara, who is married to Ed. And you have Nell, who is married to Liam. At the start it can be a little bit confusing with all these characters suddenly introduced. They do have a little family tree, and sometimes this can be a little bit overwhelming at the start because you're sort of immediately introduced to characters who don't really play such a big part in it until maybe halfway through the book. But by, you know, a quarter of the way through, you weren't really looking at that anymore. You sort of knew the characters. This is a book where I would say it doesn't have, like, it alludes to something happening on the back of the book. You know, every family occasion is a party until the day the secrets spill out. Playtime is over, but where are the grown-ups? And there is a prologue to this which sort of is at that sort of party event where something sort of blows up and, you know, secrets may be spilled or are going to be spilled, and then from there it goes to 6 months before, and it then leads up again to that time period of that event, that party where it suddenly explodes. So I just found it really interesting to get to know the individual characters. They all brought something different. The dynamics that they had, they were all very different. And it did cover some quite like heavy topics. Jessie is a pretty successful businesswoman with her husband. They have a like a supermarket company. This is based in Ireland. She's very like headstrong woman, very work focused. Her first husband passed away, so she has children from that marriage. So it's definitely like blended with stepchildren, that sort of thing. And yeah, from this book I'd say there's something that sort of anyone could try and relate to, I'd say. So you've got that dynamic. You then have Cara and Ed. Cara is a secret bulimic. She very much has She very much has food binges, and it sort of explores her experience with food. and, you know, raising her kids. She worked in the hospitality industry, and then you have Nell and Liam. Liam also had a first marriage. His ex-wife and children live in America, and Nell is very much the newest part of the Casey family. She is sort of a freelance set designer, so it brings that into focus, and sort of what it's like for her being the newest member of the family, I guess. So those are sort of the three dynamics. You also have the parents of these three brothers, which play into it a little bit. They very much all look very down upon their children, like they are disappointed in all of them. They don't really get along with any of them, and no one really likes them, but they still end up going to these like big celebrations for them. You know, in this book there's a bit where they all go on holiday together in Italy, and that was a really sort of nice period of time to read about, and just throughout seeing all the dynamics in the family develop. I just really enjoyed it. I think if you love getting really sucked into a family, by the end of it you feel like you are part of the family. And yeah, another thing, Jessie, she also has a bit of like a spending addiction, I would say. They definitely spend more than they should, even though they've got quite a healthy cash flow. They definitely still spend more than they can afford, and so that becomes apparent with Jessie more. So yeah, like I said, there's definitely something I think a lot of people could relate to in each of these dynamics, whether it be having a step parent, or not being able to get on with parents, or whether it be, you know, having an eating disorder or an addiction. So yes, I did give it 4 stars, but it was more like a 4.5 stars, and I'm not quite sure why I couldn't justify giving it 5 stars. I think maybe because it resolved itself a little bit too nicely at the end. I feel like Nell definitely got the short straw in the end, and I really felt for her because I think out of everyone she lost the most in the end. So I read 6 books in total this month, which I thought was pretty good going. I'm like 3 books ahead of schedule for my 50 book target for this year. If you are on Goodreads, my link is down below so you can go follow me on there. And yeah, let me know if you sort of prefer these monthly wrap-ups or if you prefer the individual book reviews. Let me know down below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.